It's Thursday, September 11th, and a huge storm is about to impact. And we can see we have a very large risk of severe weather stretching a very large portion of the United States, really covering the entire section of the eastern Rockies, upper and northern plains. It is a marginal risk of severe weather. It's mostly going to be for that threat of some 60 to 70 mile an hour damaging winds. In some areas, that threat, I believe, is going to be higher than others, specifically up here in the northern plains. And then for our hail threat, I think it's going to be the same story. It technically does cover the same area from the SPC, but I think that risk could be heightened up here in the northern plains, and we'll talk about why that is in a minute. Now, currently there is no tornado risk outlined, but in that same area that I've been pointing out, I think there is actually a non-zero chance to see maybe a few tornadoes. And this is a deep dive on what the radar could potentially look like up here in the northern plains today. What we're going to notice first is that we will have some early morning showers in our primary risk sector. And these storms are really going to depend on how much the environment can recover from these. However, these models are definitely predicting a big recovery in the first round of storms. It's actually going to be down here along the South Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming border. This could potentially bring some scattered damaging gust and small hail, but this is not going to be the main area of concern. This will just be from a trough or area of convergence, if you will. There also might be a couple of waves from a front up here in parts of northeastern Montana as well, bringing the same thing. But what we're going to see is a bit of a low pressure system form at the top of our big trough. The troughing is going to be the main thing aiding this as well. And when this combines with the troughing, the fronts, and then also the convergence and that low pressure system, we're going to see a big mesoscale convective system form exactly when that low level jet is kicking in. That's why I do think we could potentially see a couple of tornadoes, specifically in this line of cells right here along this front, kind of drape down from that low pressure system. I think there could be a threat of all hazards of severe weather with those. And then as we go later into the night and evening, this is just going to turn into a very messy blob like outflowy MCS, potentially bringing some big damaging winds. I wouldn't be surprised to see some 70 mile an hour damaging gust out of this as well. And then this would probably be severe all the way until around the morning on Friday, or at least a strong line of thunderstorms. And then moving a bit southward, that threat of severe weather I think is going to diminish quite a bit, but we also could see definitely some severe weather down here in southern Colorado over the Rockies actually. And this is just going to be aided by that trough. We're definitely going to have enough organizational shear to see a couple of storms bring some isolated damaging gusts and also some hail out here. I think the tornado risk with these down here in parts of Colorado and New Mexico and even southern Wyoming is going to be pretty close to zero though. So I don't think that's going to really be anything to worry about. And then these would actually be from around midday all the way up until nightfall. Now with these storms, there is actually going to be a small threat of some flooding, potentially seeing 1 to 2 inches of rain in those areas I just talked about, but a surprise area of flooding is actually going to be down here in southern Florida with a focus on the southeastern sector in the West Palm and Miami-Dade region. You could potentially see 2 to 4 inches of rain if you're in that area I just said. So definitely something to be aware of, and you're going to want to look out for those flash flood warnings. And this big trough bringing a lot of our weather out here in the upper plains, eastern Rockies, and even northern plains is also going to be at fault. We're bringing some of our weather down here in South Florida as well. We can see this big ridge right here, right over Texas, bringing a lot of warmer temperatures than what we've been seeing the past month. And it kind of swoops back down, and then we see it digging into Florida as well. But the main thing, of course, is going to be our big trough. We can see this big low pressure center down here over parts of Nevada, in Oregon and Idaho, but the main thing is going to be this big area flow bringing a lot of forcing for our storms, and also this formation of a low pressure system and even a bit of a short wave moving through up here, bringing that big main sector of thunderstorms up here in the northern plains. But there's also just going to be that general threat of severe weather because of this down here in parts of the lower upper plains and areas like Colorado, New Mexico, and southern Wyoming. And our storm environment in that main area of concern, I think, is looking pretty conducive for all threats of severe weather. We even see a big curvature on our photograph and some pretty nice low level shear numbers. We also see a very high low level lapse rate and definitely a lot of organizing shear and some wind veering, all things that could potentially point to a bit of a tornado threat up here. And then with our organizing shear and wind veering, that's just for that threat of organized storms, strong updrafts, so maybe some large hail potentially. We do see we have a pretty high mid-level lapse rate, quite a bit of cape up here in our freezing level, so I wouldn't rule that out at all at this point. One thing hindering that though is a bit of this capping inversion or warm nose at around 2 kilometers brought by those early morning showers that we talked about earlier, but it looks like this isn't really going to be that much of an issue for our storms popping off. It actually can help to aid in a more discrete mode, if you will. So that could potentially help kind of keep these storms more discrete and even make them stronger in a way. But the main thing is going to be it's definitely moist enough. 66 dew point, pretty unstable, 4,000 cape. And then for a damaging wind threat, we do have a teensy bit of dry air aloft, a pretty high downdraft cape nearing 1,400, a pretty high precipitable water to 1.56 inches. So all things that would point towards a 60 to 70 mile an hour damaging wind threat. And then on top of that, we could see some hail, potentially even 2 inches in diameter, and that threat for tornadoes as well. Now for the rest of our risk area, which isn't in this main sector in the northern plains, it's pretty much going to be not as much like this environment. We're just going to have lower amounts of cape, similar levels of moisture, higher storm basis, and the tornado ingredients are pretty much going to be gone. So it's still going to be good for severe weather because we're going to have a lot of organizing shear. So definitely some organized storms anywhere else in our marginal risk area. It's just going to be mostly for that damaging wind threat and then conditional threat for some medium to small hail.